All right, let's get into this. I've been getting so many questions about Player Profit, how it works, what their platform even does. So I thought it would only make sense to come on here and make a full step-by-step breakdown about everything that you would possibly want to know about Player Profit, from the accounts and all the different types of accounts that you can choose from. And then the testing phase as well too. I get a lot of questions about the two-step challenge that you have to take on Player Profit. We're going to go over the numbers and also go over if this is actually doable for you and where you're at in your sports betting career right now. And then we're going to talk about payouts and the profit split that exists between you and Player Profit. And really start to finish, I'm just going to go over the entire platform. So if there's anything that you want to know about Player Profit, it's going to be in this video. Now, for those of you that might not be too familiar with Player Profit, I'm going to read this straight from Player Profit's website just to give you a quick breakdown on how their platform works. And I'm going to go into more detail on this later, but let's just go over this real quick. That way you have an idea of how the whole process works. So the first thing you have to do is take a test. You have to prove to Player Profit that you know what you're doing and that you're actually a good sports bettor. And the way that they do this is by having a two-phase test. We'll go over the exact numbers later. You have to take a test. You have to prove to Player Profit that you know what you're doing and you're a good sports bettor and you're consistently profiting over time. Now, depending on which account that you picked, which again, we'll go over later in this video, you will then get access to those funds. Once you pass the test and once you prove that you're a profitable bettor, you will get access to that bankroll and you're now officially a funded sports picker. Now, again, you're locking in bets without having to risk any of your own money. And the way that this works is Player Profit is going to take a 30% cut of your profits. So again, if you get a $10,000 funded account, you grow it to $11,000. Player Profit's going to keep 300 of that, and you get to take home that 70% cut of the profits at $700. So step one is you take a test, prove to Player Profit that you know what you're doing, prove to them that you're a good sports bettor. Then step two is you now get access to whichever funded account that you picked in the first place. And then from there, any profit that you make on that account, you get a withdrawal at 70%, which again, giving Player Profit 30% might sound like a lot, but remember, you're not risking any of your own money in the first place. So it's still a mathematical no-brainer to use Player Profit. Now, just because it's a mathematical no-brainer for profitable sports bettors to use Player Profit doesn't mean that Player Profit's for everyone. I'm going to go over all the requirements that you actually have to do in order to pass the funded account challenge. And by the end of this, you should get a good understanding of if this is a good idea for you to do or not. It's not that difficult to do, and it's also not that easy to do, but you can also take the test as many times as you want. So you can also factor that in as well. Now, as I go over the test and the profit target, the max drawdown, the max daily loss, I want you to notice that between the standard $1,000 account, between the standard $5,000 account, $10,000 account, if you look at all the percentages and all of the requirements, they're all the same. So again, different people have different goals, but ultimately, if you're a good sports bettor, it makes sense to go for a bigger account because it's just as difficult to get approved or not get approved as a smaller account. Now, obviously, different people have different goals, different budgets. But again, if you're a good sports bettor, it really makes sense to go for a bigger account and get access to more funding because it's just as easy to pass as one of the smaller accounts. So let's get into it. The first thing to look at is a minimum of 15 picks. Now, there's no maximum to how many bets that you can take, but this is to deter people from taking one massive plus 2,000 parlay. That doesn't prove to Player Profit that you're a good sports bettor. And this 15 pick minimum is in place for that reason. Now, if you want to take a bunch of minus 300s, you can do that. Player Profit allows you to do that. You only have a minimum of 15 picks that you have to take in order to hit that profit target. So it's as many picks as you want, but it's at least 15. And same thing goes with the unit size. You have a minimum dollar amount that you're allowed to risk every time you lock in a bet. And while it's different numbers per account, it's proportionately the same amount for each account. So the $1,000 account, the minimum risk is $10. For the $5,000 account, the minimum risk is $50. The $10,000 minimum risk is $100, and so on and so forth. It's 1% of the total value of the account. And it's the same thing across all the accounts with the maximum that you're allowed to risk. So on the $10,000 account, the most that you can risk is 5% of your bankroll, which is going to be $500. Again, the reason why Player Profit has these limits in place is because they want to see if you're actually a good sports bettor. And without these systems in place, there's a lot of ways that people could kind of work the system to seem like a profitable sports bettor or just get lucky for a week or two. And Player Profit obviously doesn't want that. They want to find truly winning sports bettors who are consistently winning. So we've gone over, you have to do at least 15 bets. We've gone over that you have a minimum bet size as well as a maximum bet size. It's 1% to 5% of your bankroll. That's the range that you're allowed to take per bet. So now let's go over the two most important parts of the test, which are how you either pass the test or you fail the test. Now let's talk about the most important one, the profit target right here at 20%. This is how you get approved to bet with the funded account that you picked, and this is how you pass the test. You need to grow that initial amount that you got up 20%. So if you got a $10,000 account, you would have to get that to a $12,000 balance. Or $1,000 account, you'd have to get it to a $1,200 balance. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. There's no time limit on how long it takes you to get there. As long as you get to the 20% mark and do at least 15 picks, as we already talked about, you pass the test and you now get access to that funded account. Now let's also talk about two other things, the max drawdown and the max daily loss. These are how you lose access to the account and how you fail the challenge. So the max drawdown that you're able to have on one phase of the test is going to be 15%. So again, that's going to be different amounts depending on which account that you use, but you cannot take that initial value and lose 15%. Otherwise, you fail the challenge. So daily loss is 10%. You cannot go down more than 10% in a single 24-hour period. Now, this is again to kind of avoid people from getting too risky on player profit. Player profit wants people who are consistently winning, not people that come in and get super risky and get lucky and pass the challenge right away. This is to help prevent that from happening. So if you lose more than 10% in a single 24-hour period, you lose access to the account. And then over the course of the whole test, if you go down 15%, you also fail the account. Passing the test isn't easy, but again, if you're a good sports bettor, if you're being smart with your money, you're not getting too risky, getting to this profit target of 20% is not that difficult to do. And the test fees are really not that expensive. To get access to a $1,000 account, it only costs $30. So again, it might actually take you a few tries in order to pass, and that's okay. Like for example, you could take the account twice, fail it both times, and then pass on your third try. And then obviously it's worth it to pay $30 those 3 times to get access to $1,000 in sports betting bankroll. So it's not about passing every single test your very first try. I think a good rule of thumb is if you're a good enough sports bettor to be able to pass this in 5 or 6 tries and hit that profit target of 20%, I think it's worth it. If you know that you're a good sports bettor, that should be pretty easy for you to do. And you don't want to convince yourself that you have to pass on the first time. But for most good sports bettors, it's not going to be that difficult to grow your bankroll 20%. And it might take a few tries, but it's still going to be worth it at the end of the day when you get access to the funded account. So this is very important. What we just talked about, for every single account, there's 2 phases to the test. You have to do exactly what we talked about twice. So you hit that profit mark of 20%. Perfect. Now you move on to phase 2. You have to do the same thing again, a minimum of 15 picks. You can't have the drawdowns that we already talked about. And once you hit that 20% mark a second time in a row, then you will get access to the funded account that you picked. Again, this is to help player profit determine who's getting lucky and who's actually a good sports bettor. But again, it's the same test. You just have to take it twice. That's why it's called a 2-step challenge. And as soon as you hit that 20% profit target on phase 2, you'll immediately get access to your funded account. And then obviously keep betting with that account and be able to withdraw your profits. Now, like I said earlier, the tests are exactly the same no matter which account that you pick. We'll talk about the pro account in a second, but for all the standard accounts, which most people will be using, all of the requirements are exactly the same between each account. Obviously, it's different amounts, but it's the same percentages, and it's the same difficulty level for every single account. So again, if you're a good sports bettor and you know that you're going to pass the challenge, it really makes sense to go for a bigger account right away because you'll get access to more capital without having to do anything that's more difficult. Now, I get that not everyone is going to have $1,000 to take a $100,000 funded account challenge. So again, different people are going to have different accounts that make sense for them. But mathematically, the bigger account you go for, the better value you get when taking player profits test. Now let's talk about the pro accounts. Now there's different options for the pro accounts, but I would say for the average bettor, the pro account isn't going to be as enticing or make as much sense as the standard account. This is really only for those absolute killers, people that really know what they're doing. These accounts are easier to pass and also easier to fail, so there's less luck involved. All of the same requirements, except your minimum risk is going to be a lot higher and your maximum risk is also going to be higher. Just like the account says, it's called the pro account. This is meant for the pros. If you're a good sports bettor and you know that you're going to be able to pass this challenge easily, this is a good option for you. But if you're kind of on the brink of, I don't know if I'm going to be able to hit that 20% mark, or I don't want to get too risky, you probably want to stay away from the pro account and stick to the standard account that allows you to bet with a smaller unit size and a smaller percentage of your total bankroll. Now, final things to go over is how you get paid out, how the profit split works, and how you should manage your account once you're in that funded phase. This is something that's really important that I don't think many people will have an issue with, but it's important to know that it's there, and that is the inactivity timer on the funded account. Once you get access to a bankroll from Player Profit, you need to make sure that you are locking in bets consistently, and you don't just abandon the account and leave it for weeks at a time, because there is an inactivity timer of 5 days that will make you lose access to your account. Obviously, you don't want that to happen, but most good sports bettors that are getting to the funded phase don't go days at a time without locking in bets. So this isn't really an issue for many people, but it's definitely good to be aware of. Now, again, how this works is, let's say you get a $10,000 account. Once you get to the funded account phase and you're ready to be paid out, Player Profit is going to keep 30% of those profits that you make. So let's say you go up $2,000. You go from $10,000 to $12,000. Player Profit is going to take a 30% cut of $600, and they're going to send you a $1,400 payout. It's a 70-30 split. Player Profit keeps 30% of your profits. You get to keep 70%. You can think of this like a fee for Player Profit bankrolling you in the first place. That's how Player Profit has structured it. I think that makes the most sense from platform to user. And that 70-30 split is exactly the same for the $1,000 account all the way up to the 100K account. It's there obviously as a good sports bettor. You want to keep 100% of your profits. But remember, this isn't like a typical sports book where you're risking 100% of your money to make 100%. You're risking 0% of your own money to make 70%. It's really a mathematical no-brainer. You can be betting right here, $1,000 unit size or a $5,000 unit size without risking any of your own money, and you get to keep 70% of the profits. So I know that 30% cut can sound intimidating at first, but you're not risking any of your own money. So it still makes sense, and that's why good sports bettors are using Player Profit left and right. Almost everyone in my circles that I know that makes at least 6 figures a year betting on sports is already using Player Profit. So I hope this kind of answers some questions that you guys might have about Player Profit. To recap, between all of the accounts, every single test is the same. The first phase, you have to go up 20%. The second phase, you have to go up 20%. And then after that, you get funded. And it's exactly the same difficulty for all the accounts. It's just as easy to pass the $1,000 account as it is to pass the 100K account. So depending on your situation, you can start out with a smaller account, but it really makes sense to just go for a larger account right away if you know that you're going to be able to pass this challenge. So I hope that answers some questions and gives you a better idea if this is something that you could do or not. A lot of good sports bettors find this pretty easy to do. Some people think that they're going to be good at it and obviously struggle to pass the test. So make sure if you try this, you're a good sports bettor, you're winning most of your bets. But again, hitting this 20% profit mark twice is not that difficult for most seasoned sports bettors to do. So if you're able to do it, you should do it because you're able to bet risk-free without risking any of your own money. Something else I forgot to mention is Player Profit is known for paying out bettors quickly. With a site like this, there could be some shady stuff that goes on, but Player Profit has a spotless reputation for paying people out quickly and accurately. There's never been a bettor that they haven't paid out how much money they owe them. And if you look at social media or online, Player Profit has an incredible reputation of treating their users very well. And that's why I use them and everyone else in the pro sports betting community does as well. That's the Player Profit breakdown. Hope that answers some questions. If there's anything that I missed in this video, drop it down in the comments below. I'll make sure to reply. If you want to see more content about Player Profit and get some more specific advice on how to pass their challenges and some tips and tricks that I've learned over the past few months using this platform, or you're just interested in educational sports betting content in general, I post a ton of that right here on this YouTube account. So make sure to subscribe. And again, if there's any more questions that you feel like I missed in this video or you're still confused about, just drop them down in the comments. I'll respond to them as soon as possible.